Yeah, this video took a while to edit. Sorry about that. I feel like once again I am faced with a nearly impossible task. Has Season 9 of Death Battle been flawless all the way through? Definitely not. Has it been great nonetheless? Absolutely. Pretty much all of the episodes have ranged from decent to pretty freaking amazing. It's probably my favorite season now, and after Season 8, that's the last thing I thought I'd be saying. So we have another season where people's rankings are going to vary dramatically. Even though I enjoyed every episode, I still gotta stack them all on top of each other, I guess. It's important to remember that my ranking is not official or objective in any way. You're not obligated to change how you feel because of my opinions, but also remember that no one is obligated to change their opinions because of you either, so yeah. Also, I've already talked about half these episodes at considerable length before, so in this video I'll be a little more brief with them, but still give them their fair time. Leave your own rankings down in the comments, and if you love Death Battle as much as I do, be sure to subscribe to see more stuff like this. Alright, let's go. I certainly liked Boba Fett vs. Predator when it first came out, but looking back and comparing it to everything else, it's easily the most forgettable for me. It's not bad by any means, and Death Battle does a good job of portraying the theme and the fight dynamic, but the rest kind of feels whatever to me, not necessarily the most exciting. I think it's partially because this matchup didn't really have a lot to work with in terms of grand spectacle, and I'm not saying every episode needs to be bombastic in nature, but I genuinely do find the rest of Season 9 more entertaining, and I think that matters. The analysis are fine, I guess, but none of the writing or humor really stuck with me, and I can definitely say that this didn't feel like a mid-season worthy event. But still, it has its merits, and if you really like it, that's great. It's just not my favorite from this season. Scarlet Witch vs. Atana has some really cool moments and goes into a lot of comic lore, but I feel like it could have gone further in a lot of places. I did appreciate the humor the fight was going for, but if they focused just a bit more on the intensity and spectacle, I think it could have lived up to its potential a lot more as far as the combat is concerned. Also, I understand the desire to simplify some of the facts in order to make it more stomachable for newly acquainted viewers, but honestly, for something like this where the characters can affect like anything and everything, I do think the specifics should be prioritized and described more thoroughly. So while I enjoyed it, there were a few things that I wish it did a bit differently, and it didn't have enough to distract me from that. I don't think this is a bad episode at all. It's completely serviceable on all accounts. But considering how a lot of the other episodes go that extra mile, this one just doesn't stack up quite as well for me. Jason vs. Michael somehow managed to be one of the most divisive episodes in terms of fan perception. I don't think this episode is that bad, but I think we can all agree it should have been more than what it was. Most of the points I can give this one come from its uniqueness and creepier style, because a lot of the horror elements are very effective and the combat that's there is proper slasher combat through and through. Unfortunately, however, there just should have been more of it. I understand why they wanted to focus on human victims in the animation, but if they were going to devote so much time to it, I think they should have taken an Omni-Man versus Homelander approach and put it at the beginning, leading into an uninterrupted battle. Putting something this long right in the middle just bodies the pacing, even if it fits with the characters. The animation is also not perfectly smooth if we're being fair, and while I'm not upset the fight wasn't live action, I'm not sure if it went crazy enough to justify doing it in 3D as opposed to live action. The campfire segments were a good alternative to the normal whiz and boomstick bits, the analyses were fine but nothing special. I think it ultimately comes down to the fact that now the Halloween is over, I don't have a strong desire to go back to this one. There's no huge selling point that makes me want to watch it again and again. Maybe that's just me having gone in with high expectations, but I'm not the only one who really wanted this fight to be amazing, and I personally wouldn't say that it was. All things considered, I actually have a bit of a soft spot for Harley vs. Jinx. It's not the best made season premiere by any means, but it delivers on the personality so well that I have a blast every time I watch it. This extends to the track, which I still really like, and the animation, which I think is mostly well written and animated, but everything else is either pretty standard or not too memorable. I definitely think the analysis humor could have been better for a fight like this, and the analyses were well put together, but could have used a more entertaining script. I guess the things I remember fondly from this episode were when Harley and Jinx were on screen, and otherwise it was just okay for me. But I still enjoy this one, I rewatch the animation all the time. It's a fun episode, that's the best thing I can say about it. James Bond vs. John Wick, in my opinion, is where we start looking at episodes that are undeniably good, and I know a lot of people who really like this one. But for me, there's one thing about it that I can't bring myself to overlook, and I'm sorry, yes, It's the animation. I really don't like criticizing animation because it's so freaking hard to do, and the fight does get better as it goes on, but I watched it after having not seen it for a while, and for me, the jankiness is still really noticeable. And I think it's only because so many of the other episodes are so well animated, which is great, but it makes this stand out more. But that's the only major knock I have towards this episode. Everything else about it is well done. Death Battle really took advantage of both the similarities and differences between Bond and Wick and used them well in the analyses and animation scripting. And they definitely knew how to lean into the most iconic sides of these characters too, from dropping 007 movie titles everywhere to reiterating just how unstoppable John Wick is. Honestly, the writing was pretty on point for me the whole way through. The editing fit the tone well. I certainly think they went into enough detail for both of them. So despite me not loving the animation quality completely, this episode did so much else that it's still quite memorable for me. It just felt like Death Battle knew these characters and their franchises so well and loved pitting them together, and that's something I can for sure respect. Magneto vs. Tetsuo is where I really need to make it clear that the review is more important than the ranking number. Despite not being ranked the highest, I enjoyed this episode pretty damn thoroughly. The animation is super engaging for more reasons than one, the analyses really know how to show off the characters and go into such amazing detail, and the track is still one of the best of the season. I will defend that till I die. As far as the matchup itself goes though, it's a mixed bag for me. I think the connections are really solid and make for a really deep fight, but it is still very one-sided and really has no way to surprise you in the conclusion. And while the execution is good, it wasn't so good that it made me think it was a fight we always needed or made me fully dismiss the one-sided nature of it. But it is still a very well-made episode, and there's no way I'm gonna deny that. Please don't hate me. I'd honestly probably say Tanjiro vs. Jonathan is like tied with Magneto vs. Tetsuo in quality. This is also just really well put together. I do think there's something special about main protagonist battles, especially when you use them to dive deep into the combatants' respective universes, which I think this one does superbly. The conclusion probably could have been presented a little better, and I can understand some people's issues with the exact scaling used, but the analyses otherwise I'd say are well written. But above all, I still love the animation. They take full advantage of the visual aesthetic, from the attacks to the background to even the camera movements. I'm happy to consider this a more average episode of the season because it still has a lot going for it that all comes together beautifully. I wouldn't be surprised if Sauron vs. Lich King wasn't popular with a good amount of fans. If you really just watch Death Battle for the animation, much prefer sprites over 3D models, and don't care about the franchises, there really isn't much here for you. But as someone who was intrigued by this matchup and enjoyed it from start to finish, I'm glad to say that I got pretty much everything I wanted out of this episode. The best thing about it is how detailed the analyses are in regards to the characters' stories and especially their worlds. Lord of the Rings and World of Warcraft are truly given their time to shine, which is genuinely entertaining. I guess the animation could have been a bit more fluid, but honestly, fluidity is not what this battle needed. The dialogue, tone, and beautiful scenery is what makes this fight so memorable and true to the characters. I think it did some of the best it could in 3D with what it was given. I don't think this episode is perfect though, particularly when it comes to the scaling and numbers, but I understand it can only go into so much detail with two somewhat niche series, so it's not the biggest deal to me. Like I said, learning about the lore was the most interesting thing about this one, and I think it did exactly what it set out to do. Deku vs. Asta was definitely one of the bigger surprises for me in terms of how much I enjoyed it. I never hated the matchup idea, and I was excited to see how it would go, but I didn't think it would be as much of a standout as it was. The analyses were so entertaining, and I loved how they leaned so hard into the characters starting from nothing and becoming one of the greatest in their worlds, because the thematic nature of this matchup is really what makes it work, and I'm glad Death Battle recognized that. I didn't have a huge issue with how they analyzed Asta, especially since they emphasized how early in the series they were getting their numbers from, and generally speaking, I think they covered everything they needed to and did justice to the franchises. The animation was also well put together with fun banter and cool action sequences, not to mention I am quite literally addicted to the track. I may need to get some help. I think the main thing that holds this one back from being even higher on the list is the fight dynamic to an extent. When you go over such cool anti-magic abilities for Asta in the analyses, and then you just can't see a lot of them during the animation, it is a little disappointing and makes you think he could have worked better with another combatant, at least animation-wise. But as far as everything else goes, I found this episode incredibly satisfying. It's one I'm gonna remember for quite a while. I was honestly a little worried that Black Adam vs. Apocalypse wasn't going to live up to my expectations, but I'm happy to say I think it did just that. This is one of those matchups where tone is so important, and if you fumble it too hard, the whole thing could suffer. But thankfully, this one knows very well what it needs to be, and the characterization during the fight is so effective in making us feel that this is a war between two conquerors who know how badass they are. The animation can get a little slow at times, but it still pulls out so many stops for each character all the way through, and the track is just so fucking good. No surprise given how much I love What's Up Danger. As for the analyses, Death Battle showed off just how well they understood Black Adam, Apocalypse, and their roles within their stories. The origins and feats are so fun to listen to, and they covered pretty much everything as far as those are concerned. They laid out all the information in a way that pays full respect to the fighters, but also makes sense in regards to the debate. So the battle works, the writing works, the conclusion works, and luckily the matchup works too. It really has all the ingredients to make something great, and it did not disappoint. Hercules vs. Sun Wukong is another episode that seemed to have some people divided, but thankfully for me, I actually enjoyed it a lot. I still think this is one of the best ways they could have introduced mythology onto the show, using two of the greatest heroes with so much history behind them and making such a show out of it. All of the special elements they put into the animation fully enhanced the experience, and the idea to treat it as an ancient legend was so perfect that I can't imagine it being done any other way now. The analyses fully embrace both the amazing and wacky sides of their stories, the track fits, the editing fits, there is simply no element that slacks whatsoever. It would have sucked so bad had this incredibly unique episode fallen flat, but thankfully that was not the case. Really hope we see more stuff like this very soon. I think Trunks vs. Silver might be my most rewatched Season 9 Death Battle to date. I talked before about how I was not looking forward to it after Trunks was confirmed, and then I was so happy to hear that it was the Zeno and Archie versions, because this version of the fight had the potential to not be painfully predictable and to show us something epic, and this episode is epic as all hell. The animation goes to insane proportions that honestly blew me out of the water. This is one of the most intense fights for both Dragon Ball and Sonic that we've ever had, and it works so well for these two. The track and sound design on this one are also just next level incredible. As far as the look and sound of this fight goes, it's absolutely breathtaking. The humor definitely takes a back seat in the script, but I think that was necessary here considering all the information they needed to go over in such a short time, which they did very effectively and made very engaging. And while disagreements about the facts and the scaling were inevitable, as someone who wasn't familiar with these versions of the characters at all, I really don't mind it, and the reasoning makes sense as a general rule. This episode really reminded me of how much work Death Battle puts into their videos. I loved the matchup, I loved the animation, I loved the script, I loved all the production elements that went into this thing. It's just so well captured and so well executed. Once upon a time, I probably would have hated Omni-Man vs. Homelander for the sole purpose of it being a painfully obvious landslide. And yes, the matchup would have been better if it was more of a debate. But that is honestly the only thing not great about it. Everything else this episode does is marvelous. The animation quality, build-up, and voice acting are some of the best I've ever seen in Death Battle. The analyses outline their worlds perfectly and pay respect to both the shows and the comics. All of the other elements like the track, the writing, the editing, it all works together to benefit the batshit crazy personality that makes this episode work. Matchups like Dio vs. Alucard and Iron Fist vs. Poe are so successful because they're so well made, but also because the signature tone took them that extra mile, and this to me is no different. From a debate perspective, yes, Omni-Man and Homelander had better opponents, but there is no way any of those other matchups could have been this entertaining. This episode did everything else so perfectly that I am convinced it's the one we always needed. I just love it, and I'm not afraid to say it. At the time of me recording this, I've only seen Gogeta vs. Vegito a couple times, so I could easily see my spot for this in particular shifting around a little bit. But whether that happens or not, I know I will always be able to recognize how fantastic it is. It really has become a meme at this point how much I love Death Battle's Dragon Ball episodes, but I can't help it if they're always nailing them. It's very easy to describe the animation as pure insanity, but I don't really think there's another way you could have done it. For characters this absurd in power, you really really need to be able to feel the craziness, and from shattering reality multiple times to seeing so many of their signature techniques, we definitely got that. The characters are also well portrayed, and the 3D models are so clean both in design and movement. Definitely my favorite 3D fight of the year. Wiz and Boomstick didn't get too much screen time for this one, and honestly, I think that's a good thing, otherwise the faster pacing could have been absolutely ruined. But the humor that is there still works in my opinion, as does the general scripting, analyses, and conclusion as a whole. It's so easy to tell that the Death Battle team really does love Dragon Ball, and that passion can be seen in every element of the production, which is so great. I didn't expect to like the track as much as I did. The whole setup they put together was really fun too, and even though a lot of people didn't like the matchup's announcement, this is still a worthy season finale, and I hope everyone can appreciate that. I don't think there's anything I'd change about it. It's such a wonderful presentation from start to finish. I do not blame anyone at all if they don't particularly like SpongeBob vs. Aquaman, but I would then ask you to not blame me for loving it as much as I do. Like Omni-Man vs. Homelander, this was clearly a passion project for the Death Battle team where they proved that a tough debate is not necessary to nail the production. Realistically speaking, I don't think there was any wasted animation potential. It had everything I expected and about 100 things I didn't know I wanted. And they all work so well together. Nothing ever feels distracting or unnecessary. They just knew exactly how to deal with SpongeBob and how to get the most out of him, and that deserves major props. And that attention to detail doesn't just apply to the fight. Both SpongeBob and Super Friends are explained so thoroughly, especially how the combatants operate within their worlds. And the humor, to me, is the best you can find in this season. I was laughing my ass off the whole time. I think what this really comes down to is this episode feels like it fully lived up to the intended vision. It was entertaining, it was well produced and edited, the tone was perfected, no analysis quality was sacrificed whatsoever, and I'm personally of the opinion that an episode being sillier should not take it out of the running for a list like this. I think that's really unfair, actually. If you genuinely didn't like it as much, that's perfectly okay, but episodes should be judged by how good you think they are, regardless of if it was normal or different. And for me, this one did it. Simply and wonderfully amazing. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion at this point, but I have to be honest, Thor vs. Vegeta is still my favorite fight Death Battle made this year. I recently rewatched it, worried that I would think less of it after so much time has passed, but no, that did not happen. Everything about this episode feels so complete. The analyses are so thorough, both generally and specifically, and the conclusion is so satisfying, leaving no stone unturned. It's that kind of detail and effort that elevates Death Battles from being good to being excellently crafted, and the animation goes so hard in every way. From the epic visual shots to the sound design of the attacks, from the voice acting and dialogue to the pacing and escalation, this fight feels as intense and as over the top as how Thor vs. Vegeta should, not to mention having one of the best kill shots and best fake out moments the show has ever had. The track is amazing, the scripting and the humor work, and as someone who likes both of these characters a lot, I'm perfectly fine with the calculations, but I know that's pretty subjective. This isn't my favorite Dragon Ball fight, there's at least one that I'm not sure is ever going to be topped, but this is still a perfect example of peak Death Battle to me. Disagree if you will, but this one's topping my list for sure. So guys, that is my official ranking of the Death Battle Season 9 episodes, at least as it stands at this moment. My opinions can fluctuate so much so quickly sometimes, but either way, I love ranking things, and I hope you enjoyed the video and at least appreciated my reasoning. Again, if your own ranking is similar or different from mine in any way, feel free to let me know in the comments. As long as we're all being civil, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this from me, but either way, I thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the other side in Season 10. Peace out.